I am Miss Hill, and I'm here to say, let's open a book and read today. Books are hip, they're cool, books will help you in school. If you read with me, here's what we'll do. I find reading fun with you. Hi, I'm Miss Hill, and I'm here to say, let's read together every day. A Long Winter, written and illustrated by Joleen Michellie. Once upon a time, in lands not so far from here, fairies danced around with nothing to fear. They flew with the seeds of the dandelion flower and hid beneath mushrooms when it started to shower. In winter they slept in the hollow mist tree, waiting for springtime to help set life free. Before the snow melts, when springtime is near, the fairies awaken. Their mission is clear. Every fairy's touch is magic, you see. It brings forth life to every flower and tree. As fairies wake up from their long winter's rest, they awaken the birdies in each little nest. Chirp, 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 chirp. The eggs, as they're touched by the fairies, they hatch, and grass changes brown to green, patch by patch. The warmth from the joy in the hearts of the fairies bring color and sweetness to all of the berries. They prance and they dance as they fly through the air, waking the fiercest of creatures with hardly a care. But this year is different. The forest still sleeps. The ice is not melting, and birds give no peeps. The chipmunks and squirrels snooze hidden in trees, while bunnies rest in their burrows just under the freeze. The time for the fairies to come out and play had long since passed with unknown cause for delay. However, deep in the forest there was an odd noise, the troublesome laughing of mean little boys. Something they had and were tossing around flew through the air and then fell on the ground. Inside the cage, most frightened and cold, was the fairy queen herself, though she didn't look old. As the cage rolled around, its prisoner tumbled. Her clothes were all tarnished, and one wing was crumpled. A small boy looked up from the stump where he sat. Then he frowned at the biggest and meanest boy Matt. A cold wind blew past, and the two bullies shivered. Their teeth chattered together as they stood there and quivered. The small boy got up and he picked up the cage. He had freckly cheeks, and his name was Gage. Gage took off his scarf and he covered the queen, then noticed the spot she had landed was green. He thought for a moment, but just shook his head, then was pushed down to the ground by a bully named Ed. "And what do you think you are doing with that? It's ours. You can't have it. She belongs to Matt." Gage got back up to his feet in a flash. He was small and outnumbered, so he said, "I've got cash. I'll buy her from you. You can have all my money." Then Ed and Matt laughed like he'd said something funny. "Well, she's not for sale, so you hand her over." The snow melted away and they were standing in clover. The cage shook, then rose right up in the air. Matt and Eddie cried, "Hey, come back down, that's not fair." Inside, the queen flew as high as she could, up higher and higher, with her cage made of wood. The kindness Gage showed gave the queen back her strength. She surged past the treetops at quite some length. "Look what you did now," said the bullies to Gage, but Gage wasn't listening. He was watching the cage. Matt said to Eddie, "It's cold, let's get going." Gage hadn't noticed that it was now snowing. The cage in the sky could now barely be seen, so Gage followed the newly formed trail of green. He walked on for miles deep into the wood, then stopped in the meadow where the great mist tree stood. He sensed something magical here in this place. Then the cage floated down right in front of his face. He went right to work at unbinding her cell. As she climbed on his hand to the ground, the cage fell. Gage stood in the meadow now here with the queen. The mist swiftly vanished, thus spring could be seen. Gage smiled at her, and she smiled too. Then, with a hop, skip, and a jump, to the mist tree she flew. A wondrous magical thing then occurred. The mist tree was glowing, and music was heard. Then fairies emerged and were swirling around. What could only be fairy dust slowly fell to the ground. One fairy drew near and landed right on his arm. Somehow they'd known that he meant them no harm. He watched as the fairies flew up to the sky. Sadly, he knew it was time for goodbye. Just then the fairy queen emerged with her wand. She led Gage by the hand to the now unfrozen pond. And moving so quickly she could hardly be seen, she dunked his thumb in the water, and then it was green. Plants started sprouting, and noises were heard, from the thumping of a rabbit to the chirping of a bird. Then the queen gave a kiss to Gage on his nose. His whole body tingled right down to his toes. And that was the last that he saw of the fairies, but he knows when they come by the taste of his berries. Gage could grow anything he tried to plant. It amazed every person, especially his aunt. He owns a small farm now with apricot trees, the only farmer around who won't worry about freeze. So remember, in winter, when springtime is near, as long as there is kindness, there's nothing to fear. The end. I am optimistic. I am hopeful. I am positive. I am optimistic. People come in different sizes, different colors, shapes, and names. Although we're different on the outside, inside we are just the same. Press the subscribe button to tune in for the next story time with Miss Hill. Thanks for joining me for today's Read Aloud. Remember, what makes us all different makes us special. You are so special and so loved. Thanks for joining in, and I'll see you next time.